Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You're always most welcome. Well, today the big question that you need to ask yourselves if you consider yourself to be a serious modeller of any kind, and the question is, do you paint on the sprue? Well, do you? This is an interesting subject, I think. Something I have to be honest, several years ago I was on the Flory forum, and Phil Flory got a load of criticism because he showed, as I'm going to do, he showed some examples of painting on the sprue. And I think some of the people, I don't know the individuals, it doesn't matter, but I think people on Brit Modeler, as well as other places, and I'm not knocking Brit Modeler here at all, it's a brilliant resource, but one or two individuals got a little bit over their skis and started getting really excited about it and saying things like, you can't be considered to be a real modeller. No modeller that can be taken seriously would paint on the sprue. So the question is, do you? Now I've got here's a classic example of something I'm working on at the moment. It's my ZZ sprue. This is on my mosquito build. So here's the dilemma that we face, many of us, especially those of you that are doing bigger projects like I am at the moment. My 32nd mosquito is quite a big project. So here's a sprue. Now, is it so difficult? You know, I'm going to do something I never do normally live on it. I'm going to cut part off the sprue. So let's get a nice decent cutter for this. So here we go. By the way, I prefer, despite the trends and advice people give, I prefer to cut my part as close as possible to its base and do it in a very subtle, careful way like that, rather than chop it, you know, several millimetres away and then have to re-chop it with the craft knife. Now, the point of the painting on the sprue debate is this. You've now got, I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up, I've got to be honest. You've now got this is the parachute, by the way, for the co-pilot, which I don't think I'm going to use, actually. I don't think I need to use it. It's intended for when he's not sitting on it. Sorry, when he is sitting on it. Anyway, I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. Just a tiny bit of clean up there. A bit of a seam line as well, just get rid of that. So there we go, it's cleaned up. So now, okay, there's another repeat on that side, but we won't worry about that because it's not seen. Now it's ready for painting. So here's the thing, I'll zoom back. Here's the dilemma then. So now we get to the situation where we have to decide the logistics of the build of your kit. Now I have got to be honest with you. I often make this comment about, you painting on the sprue, you should be bloody ashamed of yourself. Have you got no dignity? Is your skill so low that you have to sort of do it like an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old would do, and just plaster paint on just to make it a quicker build? Really? Is that the best you can do? Really, Mr. Bond? Have you no respect for the plastic? Well, let me show you a couple of examples where I've been a bit naughty. I'm going to bring you onto my little iPad here. I think you might find this quite amusing. So here's a couple of classics from my own back catalogue. So here we've actually got the Tamiya 1/20th scale Lotus 79 Formula 1 car, the car that won the World Championship in 1978. And you can see some classic criminal behaviour here, which we'll talk about more on that subject in a second. You can see I've done quite a bit of the, this is in the days when Formula 1 cars had an aluminium monocoque. And quite a lot of the aluminium there has been indeed painted on the sprue. Even the pedals down here, I don't know if you can see that. Even the pedals have been painted on the sprue. Disgraceful. Now the thing is, when you've got a lot of repetitive painting, where there are large chunks of a subject where it has the same colour, you wouldn't want to cut every one of these off, would you? I mean, you can do. But in terms of the speed of build of some of these bigger projects, you're going to be there forever. Even longer than Peter Oxley, potentially. But this is a few shots, and here's another example, also from that same build, from the Lotus 79. Here we've got the wheels, which actually come already chromed for you, which look absolutely great. You just have to paint the gold centres, which I did. Then, a few more examples, radiators and things from the same build. gearbox, top of the engine. Oh, in fact, I don't know if I skipped over that. That's the engine block has also been painted on the sprue. Have you no shame, Mr. Bond? Disgraceful. Yes, and this is actually from the McLaren MP46, different kit altogether. 12 scale, and then we've also got, again, the McLaren MP46, I think that is... No, it's not, sorry, that's the Mustang P51D. The 32nd scale kit from Tamiya. Same again. Painting on the sprue, levels of detail like this. Have you no respect, Mr. Bond? And on it goes, you know. And again, this is the... What was that? That was the... Oh, that's the Honda RC166 motorbike. And look at that. Spark plugs painted on the sprue. Check it out. Those are the spark plugs themselves. Tut, tut, tut. Here we've got the Spitfire. I think that's the 32nd scale Spitfire from Tamiya. And so on. And now we come to the present day. Pretty disgraceful. Disgraceful. Have you no shame? So the thing is, there's this stigma around it, isn't there? It's not the biggest deal in the world, of course. It isn't. The thing is, I have found on the bigger projects, I'm going to show you them actually rather than just a photograph. Here's one I prepared earlier. So here's the current build I'm doing. This is the Mosquito. And you can see here we've got quite a bit of the frontal section of the fuselage, including underneath where the gun bays are and the bomb bay. And if I flip it over, you'll realise I've done quite a lot of painting on the sprue already, because you've got the internal XF71, the cockpit green, and it needs doing, you know. So the question really comes down to this. You've got that one, I've got this one over here as well, another example of the same thing. Here we've got some cockpit green, got some black been done. X18, some semi-gloss black, also been done on the sprue. So, okay, there's some examples. So clearly, I have got no, I've got no moral claim to be to be not doing this terrible, terrible crime. Now, some people do talk. I may not know how to joke about it, but some people do talk as if it's a crime. Some people make out it's a bit of a sin. But the reality is, when you've got that many parts where you've got a lot of commonality, you can have a kit where perhaps 20% of the kit is all the same colour. It's just so much quicker, and you can, in a lot of the cases with these parts, you can easily, alright, you end up with when you cut it off the sprue, you end up with a little nub, a mark from the sprue gate contact point. But in many cases, it's in a place that's not obvious anyway, which is why they've, especially something like Tamiya, you know, they've chosen it wisely. Choose wisely. And they often put them in places that are less critical. So the cleanup is cleanup stroke touch up. It's not really a problem. You only got to put a little tiny touch up on an edge or whatever it is, and there you have it. So I don't know. I think it's like a mass production system really. When people paint on the sprue, and this is probably why someone like Phil Flory does it, because he does a lot of volume at relatively high speed, I think so anyway, compared to me. Very high speed. But it's a bit like, you know, mass production in American automobile factories. If you're going to cut off every single part and paint it individually and then clean you, like I do, I clean my airbrush a lot, people know about this. I don't be doing that and then doing it again, then doing it again, and then on and on and on and on. 500 parts, you know, come on, you're not going to do that, are you? Are you? I'd be interested to know what sort of percentage, but you can't have a poll on it perhaps, and see a percentage of how many you paint on the sprue and how many you would never consider doing that. And I can see the arguments both ways, I can. But I don't know if it's that big a deal really. But you can see I've done it quite a lot, and it's a mass production system really. And I've never had a kit where it has had any negative visible impact on the kit at all, even when viewed fairly close up, you know. Just not an issue. As long as you make sure that you're careful and you do any spots that just need a touch up once you've done the clean up. There will be cases where perhaps an edge, like you saw actually with this little parachute, where the edge just needed a bit of a clean. Now that's not painted on the sprue, but had I painted that on the sprue, that probably would need touching up a bit more. So then you start to think, well, is it worth it then on smaller parts? And that's the thing. I think it works better medium to large parts than it does on small ones. But what do you think? What do you think? Well, I'd like to hear the views of what other people's process is and how you go about it, really, because I started thinking about it doing this mosquito, and I'm still in the early stages, of course, but it really did come to mind, and I thought, ooh, in Starmer's Britain, you can be arrested for all sorts of things now. Is this a crime? Is this one of these new things that was, instead of merely being frowned upon, is it now criminal? Is it a sin? Is it really sinful? What does the Bible have any view on this? Or, other religions are available. I don't know. I think that people make a big deal out of things sometimes, don't they, really? I think that it's the old story, you should do whatever works for you. I've said this in the past, really. I don't think this is going to have much impact either way. I think that's the important way of thinking about it. I don't think it matters either way you prefer to do it. There's a positive or a negative. I just think it's quicker, painted on the sprue, where appropriate. And I say it really works better, I think, with bigger areas like you've got here. But what do you think? I'd be very interested to hear. Anyway, so just a little quick short one today, just thought-provoking. I just wanted to just to show it and talk about it and see what other people do. I think that, again, if you've got a big build, if you're doing something like armour, for example, don't think you need to do it, really. I don't, because you end up with something that is largely painted in one colour, usually. Certainly on the exterior, one colour, and one colour on the interior normally, basically. So I think it's less important. I think this is more important when you've got a variety of colours and you've got some that have got big areas, some larger parts. Then it makes more sense to just do one. So it's like, I'll have a run of matte black, do that for 40 minutes, and then later on the day we'll have a bit of, aluminium, for example, or silver, chrome, and then we might have a bit of this cockpit green. But if you're going to do it properly, and this is where it does get a bit complicated, to get the most benefit out of it on something like I've got here, you almost have to, and I did this, I won't have done it perfectly, I know there'll be bits I've missed, but basically I've gone through quite a lot of the instructions looking for the parts that will be the cockpit green. And then you really are mass producing it, because then you're actually pre-painting in advance all the relevant parts to save time, to save cleaning your brush, the airbrush, or your paintbrush, it's hand painted, repeatedly painting it and then going back and forth and back. A bit like I complained about with my figures, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Oh my god, it drove me crazy. And I've got through so much sort of brush cleaner and and brushes. If you can mass produce, as I said, 20% is in one colour perhaps. If you can do 15 or 20% of the whole kit and paint it in one go, that's attractive, isn't it? Because it's going to save you so much time, so much hassle, so much cleaning, and just this back and forth that drives you absolutely mad, So repetitive, you don't want to be doing that. So I would say, my personal opinion this is, each to the road at the end of the day, but I think that when you've got kits like this, big kits with lots of parts and a high volume of them in one predominant colour, then it makes sense to pre-plan and go and paint them in sequence, in colour sequence, and have production runs of different colours. It works for me anyway. Anyway, that's just my thoughts. Very interested to hear what other people have to say about this on that subject. So, yes, give it some thought and let me know in the comments. Let us know in the live chat. I'm very, very interested to hear what people think, and if you've ever been told off for doing this, and if it's considered, tell me whether you think it's a sin or is it a crime against modelling. Because it's not something that people used to do years ago. People would just build up the kit, do a bit like the matchbox system. You do a little bit of fine painting, hand painting of all the small parts, and then the rest you just paint with a brush in those days, I guess, mainly. When they first came out, because people tended not to have airbrushes. And then later you'd airbrush it, and it's much quicker doing it that way. But when you've got intricate parts and many, many hundreds of them like you got here, that doesn't really work. You can't go about it like that at all. I think that this painting on the sprue for me is the one way I can try and speed things up a bit and overcome my own natural slowthness, overly. It's like a shortcut really to help me get around my natural inclination to be a bit OCD, which can be very, very counterproductive on something like this when you've got all these parts. But anyway, there we go. What are your thoughts? I'm very interested. Throw that open and have a good read in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Thought it was a little bit thought-provoking. Only a short one today. Just thought we'd have a little bit of fun with this subject and see what the feedback is, and try and get a feel for where everybody is on that subject. Anyway, until next time, I'll be back soon with some reviews. In the meantime, please look after yourselves, stay well and stay safe. Thanks very much for joining me. Thanks a lot. Until next time, take care of yourselves and bye for now.